Hello. My name is Emma. I'm 75 years old. And for the first time in my life, I'm telling this story not because I want sympathy, but because I need to finally say it out loud. Maybe someone out there has felt like I have. Maybe someone out there needs to hear that they're not invisible. Not crazy. Not too sensitive. Not too old to matter. I live alone in a small house on the east side of Savannah, Georgia. It's the same house my late husband, Walter, and I bought after he came home from the Navy. There's a creaky porch, magnolia trees out front, and wind chimes that never stop singing when the breeze comes through the Spanish moss. Some days, the silence feels like peace. Other days, it's so loud it could break your heart. I hadn't celebrated my birthday properly in years. Not since Walter passed. We used to do something simple, just the two of us. He'd bring home peach cobbler from Miss Lila's diner, and we'd sit on the porch swing and listen to Ella Fitzgerald playing softly on the record player. That was enough for me. Just being remembered. Just being with someone who saw me. This year, though, felt different. Back in January, my son Marcus called me out of the blue. "Mom," he said, sounding more excited than I'd heard him in a long time. "I've got something big planned for your 75th. We're taking a trip. You. To me. Janelle. Lila, just us Carters. Someplace warm. Just pack your favorite dresses and let us do the rest." I laughed. I actually laughed. I nearly dropped the phone into my oatmeal. It had been so long since anyone planned something just for me. Since I'd been anywhere besides the grocery store, Sunday service, or doctor's appointments. A vacation I hadn't had one since Reagan was president. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Not telling. It's a surprise. Just trust me." And I did. Of course I did. Marcus is my only child. I raised him through a recession, chickenpox, teenage rebellion, college debt, and 2 breakups. Trusting him was second nature. He said they'd need to book things early, get group rates, so he asked if I could use my card just to hold the reservation. I didn't ask too many questions. Just handed him the numbers. I figured he'd pay it back eventually. And besides, he said this was for me. For months. I waited. I bought a new suitcase from the discount store, purple. My favorite color. I left it by the door like a soldier waiting for orders. Every week, I added something new, my Sunday sandals. The wide-brimmed sun hat Walter used to love. And a fresh lavender dress that I caught on sale at Belk. I even tucked one of Walter's old handkerchiefs in the front pocket just to feel like he was coming with us. I started humming again while I swept the floor. I started putting on lipstick, just to see how I'd look in the mirror. I even bought a bottle of fancy lotion, Golden Sands it was called, and dabbed it on my wrists in the morning. Silly little things. I know. But they made me feel seen. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been forgotten. But that's the funny thing about hope. It makes a home in your heart before you even realize it's moved in. And sometimes, it overstays its welcome. The night before my birthday, Marcus called. It was around 7:45 p.m. I was just pulling a lemon pound cake out of the oven when my cell phone buzzed. His name popped up on the screen, Marcus, my boy, the way I'd saved it years ago. Back when he used to call me just to say goodnight. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice rushed, like he was driving. I could hear traffic in the background. "Quick thing, I hate to do this, but we might have to push the trip back a little." I paused, still holding the hot cake pan with my oven mitts. "Push it back?" I asked. keeping my voice light. How long are we talking? Baby, not long. Just a few weeks. Something came up with Lila's school schedule, and Janelle's jobs being weird about vacation days. He was talking fast, too fast. My heart was sinking like a stone in water. But you're still coming over tomorrow. Right, I asked. Quieter this time. For dinner, there was a pause on the line. Of course, he said quickly. Wouldn't miss it. We'll come by around 6. I held on to that tightly. That's fine, I said, smiling even though he couldn't see it. Life happens. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment. The scent of warm sugar and vanilla all around me. I told myself not to be disappointed. Plans changent. People get busy. The trip would still happen just later. But I'd still see my family tomorrow. That was what mattered. So I woke up early on the morning of my 75th birthday. The sun was pouring through the lace curtains in my kitchen. And my gospel playlist was playing through the Bluetooth speaker Marcus bought me 2 Christmases ago. I put on a fresh pot of coffee. Then started cooking like I used to when Walter's church friends came over after Sunday service. Fried chicken. Baked macaroni and cheese. Collard greens with smoked turkey. Sweet potato pie made from scratch. Not from a frozen mix. I even used the good china. The set with the gold trim that Walter and I got for our wedding and only brought down for Thanksgiving and Easter. I set the table for 5 me. Marcus. Janelle. Lila. And maybe Chris from next door if they brought him a plate. I lit the tall tapered candles and placed a vase of yellow daisies in the center. At 4:00 p.m., I took a long shower and got dressed in the soft blue floral dress Walter used to say made me look like springtime itself. I curled my hair, dabbed on some rose-colored lipstick, and put on my pearl earrings. By 5:00, everything was perfect. By 6:00, I started checking the window. By 7:00, I had reheated everything once. By 7:30, again. By 8:00, I stopped trying. By 8:45, I was still sitting at the table, surrounded by empty chairs, cold food, and melting candles. I stared at the birthday card I had picked up for myself at the Dollar Tree. It said, "You're still glowing in pink glitter." I thought it was cute when I bought it. Now it just sat there like a joke. The food didn't taste right anymore. I tried to eat a little, but it felt like chewing regret. The pie was untouched. The chicken had gone dry. My lipstick had faded. My smile was gone with it. At 9:15, I finally stood up, blew out the candles, and packed everything into containers. I folded the napkins. I turned off the music. Then I sat in the living room. Lights dimmed. Looking at the purple suitcase by the door, still packed. Still waiting. The next morning, the house was still. Not the kind of still that feels peaceful. Like early Sunday quiet. No, this was the hollow kind. The kind that follows disappointment and echoes through every corner of your home. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the little purple suitcase by the door. Still packed. Tag still hanging off the handle, like a sad little flag waving for attention. Part of me, some stubborn little sliver, still believed the trip might happen. That maybe Marcus was telling the truth? That maybe it was just delayed. I shuffled into the kitchen, tied my scarf tight, and poured a cup of tea I didn't drink. Opened the fridge, saw the pie, closed it again. Couldn't bring myself to touch the leftovers. Couldn't touch the dishes either. They sat there in the sink, reminding me of the dinner no one showed up to. I wrapped myself in the old knit shawl Walter gave me on our 25th anniversary, still faintly smelling of cedar and lavender. Then I sat in my recliner and stared at the floor while the ticking clock above the window marked every second of a birthday no one remembered. Until there was a knock. 3 soft taps. I moved slowly. Looked through the curtain, and there he was, Chris. The young man from 2 doors down. That sweet boy. Always polite. Always kind. Raised right. Like people used to be. Hey, Miss Emma, he said with a grin, holding up a plastic bag. Got you that lemon dish soap you mentioned? Bless your heart. I smiled, stepping aside to let him in. Come on in. Baby. He set the bag on the counter and glanced around. I was about to offer him tea when he spotted my phone on the table. You still having trouble with your apps? He asked. I chuckled. Always. I press one thing and everything disappears. You'd think I was hacking the Pentagon the way this thing acts up. He picked it up and sat at the table. Let me take a look. I turned to wipe the counter again, just to keep my hands busy. But a moment later, his voice changed. Miss Emma, he said gently. Did you say your family was planning a birthday trip for you? I turned toward him. Yes. Why, he hesitated. I don't mean to be nosy. But I follow your granddaughter, Leela, on Instagram. I frowned. Okay. He flipped the phone around and held it up. I think you need to see this. It took me a second to focus, but when I did, I stopped breathing. There they were, Marcus, Janelle, and Lila standing on a white sand beach, the ocean sparkling behind them. All 3 were wearing matching t-shirts that read, Carter Family Getaway 2024. Lila was holding a coconut drink. Janelle had on a wide-brimmed straw hat and mirrored sunglasses. Marcus was smiling, arms crossed, tanned, relaxed, like he hadn't just left his mother waiting alone at a dinner table set for 5. The caption read, Much needed escape. No drama. Just sunshine. Number family first. Number blessed. I stared at the photo for what felt like a lifetime. Then Chris handed me the phone, and I scrolled. One picture after another. Resort pools. Champagne glasses. Fancy dinners. Lila showing off a gold bracelet. Not a single mention of me. They told me it was postponed. I whispered. Said they'd come by. They promised. Chris didn't say a word. He just sat with me. Quiet. Present. And that's what broke me. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. But the silence of a young man who didn't owe me a thing, sitting there with more love in his presence than the people I raised with my own hands. I didn't call Marcus that night. I didn't scream or break dishes or send angry texts. Instead, I sat at my dining table long after Chris left, staring at my reflection in the dark window. It looked like someone else, someone smaller, older, more tired than I remembered. My hands were folded neatly in my lap, and all I could think was, they used me. They really used me. I didn't sleep much. The house groaned louder than usual, like it was mourning with me. I got up before dawn, made coffee. I didn't drink, and folded towels just to stay upright. Then, around 6:00 p.m., the front door opened. No knock. Just like always. Marcus strolled in like he was still 17. Like he was just coming home after basketball practice. Like nothing had happened. Hey, Mama, he said casually, placing a white bakery bag on the table. We brought you something. I didn't say a word. just kept folding towels at the kitchen counter. He pulled out a slice of red velvet cake wrapped in wax paper, sealed with a little gold sticker. "From that place downtown you love," he said, smiling like a child who'd just brought home a good grade. I turned and looked at the cake, then up at him. "That what you brought back from Florida?" I asked quietly. His smile twitched. Just for a second. "Oh," he said, trying to laugh it off. "So you saw the pictures, I saw everything." I said, "The beach, the resort, the champagne, the matching shirts, the gold bracelet on Lila's wrist." He shifted his weight, scratched the back of his neck. "Mom, listen. We didn't think you'd want to travel all that way. You get tired. We didn't want to put pressure on you." I stepped slowly around the counter, facing him fully. "That's not what you told me. You told me we were going together. You said the trip was postponed." He shrugged. Plans changed. It wasn't that deep. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "You used my credit card. Marcus, you paid for the whole trip in my name." He blinked, caught off guard. "It wasn't like that. You gave it to me for emergencies." And a beach vacation was an emergency. He looked annoyed now. Defensive. "Mom, it was one birthday. You've had 74 of them." That's when something inside me cracked quietly. But completely. "One birthday," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "It was my first one without your father. And I thought maybe, just maybe, you wanted to spend it with me, not run away from me." He groaned and sank into a chair like he was the one exhausted. "You're being dramatic," he muttered. I blinked, stunned. "Dramatic," I said, slowly, tasting the word like something bitter. "Yes," he said, louder now. "You had food. You had the house. You always say you don't need much. Why is this such a big deal?" All of a sudden I looked at him then, not just at his face, but through it, at the boy I'd raised. The one I'd rocked to sleep when he had nightmares. The one I'd skipped meals for so he could eat. The one I sold my wedding ring to buy braces for. "I'm your mother, Marcus," I said, tears stinging behind my eyes. "Not your wallet." He didn't respond. So I picked up the broom. "You can go now," I said softly. He looked up, confused. "I need to sweep," I added. "And I don't like sweeping around things that don't belong in my house." He stood slowly, opened his mouth like he might say something, but nothing came out. He left without another word. And I stood there, in the quiet, clutching the broom, realizing that sometimes the biggest messes aren't on the floor. They're sitting right across the table from you. The house felt quieter after Marcus left. Not just empty, cleared. I didn't cry. Not that night. I just sat on the porch under the old string lights Walter and I hung up 20 years ago. They still flickered sometimes, like they couldn't decide whether to stay lit or let go. I sat there with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, listening to the hum of the cicadas and the ache in my chest. Not grief. Not yet anger. Just stillness. Like my spirit had sat down to catch its breath. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I went through the motions, watered the plants, fed the birds, reheated the same bowl of soup too, 3 times a day. But something was off. Something inside me had shifted. Then came the electric bill. It was higher than I expected. Much higher. I checked my purse, almost empty. Groceries were low. And I had no idea where my social security check had gone. Marcus always said he handled the finances. That I didn't need to worry. But suddenly, I was worrying plenty. I remembered what Chris had told me a few months back about a retired judge who volunteered down at the community center helping women like me get legal advice. "You'd like her," he said. "Name's Miss Randall. She doesn't play games." I didn't want to bother anyone. I didn't want to admit I might have been blind. But pride doesn't keep the lights on. So I called. Miss Randall came the next afternoon. She was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair pulled back into a twist and sharp eyes that looked like they'd seen every kind of lie the world had to offer. She wore flat shoes, no makeup, and a canvas tote full of papers like she meant business. "Emma Carter," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "That's me. Chris told me you might need a little guidance." I motioned for her to sit at the kitchen table. I had set out 2 glasses of sweet tea, even though I hadn't had the energy to drink any myself. "I don't want to cause trouble," I started. "I just need a little help. The numbers ain't adding up." "Do you have any retirement savings?" she asked. I nodded. "Marcus manages it. Always said I didn't need to deal with the stress." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "And how often do you look at your own accounts?" "I haven't." "In a while." She leaned forward. "Would you mind pulling up your online banking for me?" I hesitated. But then I nodded and opened the old laptop Walter used to play solitaire on. It took a few tries to remember my password. But eventually, we got in. The numbers hit me like a slap. Our savings was down to almost nothing. Withdrawals, one after another. Thousands of dollars gone, transferred to an account under Marcus's name. Luxury resorts, electronics, something labeled consulting fees. Miss Randall didn't look surprised. She just exhaled. Slow and steady. "This isn't stress, Mrs. Carter," she said quietly. "This is misuse. This is exploitation." My throat tightened. "He's just trying to build something. He's under pressure." She gave me a look not harsh, not cold, but real. "You're not a bank," she said. "You're a mother, and you don't owe him your life's work just because you love him." I blinked, trying to keep my lips from trembling. My hands were folded so tight in my lap. They hurt. "You said you wanted help, Miss," Randall continued gently. "I can help, but only if you're ready to stop letting your kindness be used against you." I stared down at the kitchen tile Walter had laid with his own hands so many years ago, and I whispered, "I think I'm ready." It didn't take long for the ripple to reach him. 3 days after Miss Randall helped me move my funds and revoke Marcus's access, I started getting missed calls. At first, just a few. Then more. Then came the texts. "Mom, we need to talk. Card isn't working. Did something happen? Call me ASAP." But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, silence was on my side. Miss Randall had warned me, he'll come. Maybe not today. But the moment he feels the money's gone, he'll show up. And she was right. Saturday morning, around 10:30. I was folding laundry when I heard heavy footsteps on the porch. The screen door creaked, then slammed open. Marcus burst in, red in the face, holding his phone like it was a weapon. "What the hell is going on?" "Mama," I didn't flinch. I had practiced this moment. In my head, in the mirror, even in my prayers. "You'll need to be more specific," I said, setting down a towel. He paced like a lion in a too small cage. My business account is frozen. My card got declined at the gas station. I can't access the bank app. You trying to humiliate me? No, I said calmly. I'm trying to protect what's mine. Janelle came in behind him, this time without the usual full-face makeup or heels. She looked tired, nervous. Her arms folded across a hoodie that hung off one shoulder. I told you this was going to blow up, she mumbled. Stay out of it. Janelle. Marcus snapped. No, I said, turning to face her. Let her speak. I'd like to hear what y'all told yourselves while you were sipping cocktails on my birthday. Janelle looked away. We needed help. Mama, Marcus said, the business hasn't taken off yet. I figured. You always said your money was for family. I stepped forward slowly. For emergencies enklasting. Marcus. For medicine. Maybe groceries. A college fund for Lila. Not margaritas and beachfront resorts. We were going to pay it back, he muttered. When I asked, after I die, after the house is sold, his face flushed. Don't say that. Why not? I snapped. You've already been spending, like I'm gone. The silence that followed was so thick. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to pause. You've always made things harder than they need to be, he muttered bitterly. And you've always made promises you never kept. I replied. You promised we'd travel together. Promised you'd come to dinner. Promised I'd never have to feel alone. He looked like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. So I walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled out an envelope, and laid it on the table. What's this? He asked. My new will, I said. Everything I have left my house, my pension, even the quilt your grandmother stitched is going to a nonprofit that helps women recover from financial abuse. His jaw dropped. You're cutting me out. You cut yourself out, I said softly. The day you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as a bank account. Janelle was crying now. She grabbed her purse and backed toward the door. I didn't know it was like that, she whispered. I thought you were okay with it. You didn't ask, I said. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than permission. She left without another word. Marcus Lingel. Hands in fists. Eyes darting like a cornered animal. So that's it, he asked. You're done. I picked up Miss Randall's business card from the table and looked him in the eye. Yes, Marcus, I said. I'm finally done. And this time, when he slammed the door, I didn't jump. I just picked up my towel, folded it neatly, and smiled. Not because I was angry, but because I was free. A full year passed. Not rushed. Not blurred. A full end, quiet, intentional year. I won't pretend it was easy. Some days I still stared out the window longer than I meant to, wondering if I was too harsh. If maybe I should have picked up the phone when Marcus called again a few weeks after the accounts were closed. But then I'd remember. I'd remember the ache in my chest when I saw that beach photo. The untouched birthday meal. The way Marcus looked me dead in the eye and asked for a piece of my inheritance while I was still breathing. No, I didn't regret it. Instead, I focused on building something else, something better. With Miss Randall's help, I finalized the transfer of my assets. My bank accounts were secured. The deed to my house protected debt. My new will was notarized. Every penny directed to a local women's nonprofit in downtown Savannah that supported seniors facing financial abuse. The work they did was powerful, quiet, and deeply necessary. just like healing. And then there was Chris. That sweet boy didn't fade away after the fallout. If anything, he came by more often. Sometimes just to fix the remote or help with groceries. Sometimes to sit in the living room and listen to me talk about Walter. Or the time I sewed prom dresses for 3 girls in 1 week and made just enough money to keep the lights on. He never asked for anything. Never made me feel like I owed him something just for being kind. So when my 76th birthday came around, I didn't wait for ghosts. I called the community center and reserved the side room, the one with the windows that let in all the morning sun. I ordered real southern food from a local catering lady, deviled eggs, fried chicken, red beans and rice, collard greens with smoked turkey, and the richest lemon-glazed pound cake you ever tasted. I didn't set the table for Marcus, or Janelle, or even Lila. I set it for people who had shown up when I was at my lowest. Chris arrived first, carrying a Bluetooth speaker and 24 daffodils. He hugged me gently and set up Mahalia Jackson on the playlist. Next came Miss Randall, wearing a linen blazer and a smile like she'd just won a case in heaven's highest court. Then came the women from the nonprofit, some in church hats, others in sneakers, some walking slow with canes, others pulling grandkids behind them like a parade. We ate. We danced. We swapped stories about husbands and heartbreak, favorite recipes and forgotten dreams. We laughed so hard at one point I had to sit down before I cracked a rib. Then the door opened. Softly. No big entrance. No heels clicking. No phone held up for social media. It was Lila. She wore jeans and a plain t-shirt. No bracelets. No fake lashes. No filter. Just a girl holding a birthday card and the kind of nervous energy that made the air shift. "Grandma," she said from the doorway. "I didn't know. I really didn't. Dad said you didn't want to travel. He said you were too tired." I believed him. I looked at her, really looked. This was the same little girl who used to sit on a stool and stir grits with both hands while I stood behind her, steadying the bowl. It hurt. "Baby," I said gently, nodding. It really did. She took a step forward. "Can I stay?" I paused, then handed her a plate and nodded toward the table. "Go ahead and get you a slice of that pound cake before Miss Precedent. Randall gets to it." She smiled small, unsure, but real. She walked in, and while I didn't hug her yet, I didn't stop her either. Some things take time. But this time, I was the one deciding what love would look like. Later that evening, after all the dishes were cleared and the folding chairs stacked, Chris offered to drive me home. I didn't argue. The sun was low, painting the rooftops of Savannah in soft gold. I held the daffodils on my lap as we drove in silence, Mahalia Jackson still humming faintly from the speaker in the back seat. When we pulled into my driveway, I didn't rush out. Chris looked over. "Was today better than last year?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window at the porch, same string lights, same rocking chair, same wind chimes barely swaying in the breeze. "It wasn't better," I said softly. "It was mine." He nodded, as if he understood something deep without needing it, explained, "That's what matters." "Miss Emma." I stepped out of the car and stood there on the porch, the air cool against my skin, carrying just the faintest smell of honeysuckle from Mrs. Thomason's garden next door. I looked up at the stars just starting to blink awake, and for a moment, I thought of Walter. Not in sadness, just in memory. Then I went inside, changed into my robe, and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I didn't check my phone. Didn't look for a message from Marcus. I didn't need to. If he had sent one, it would have been too late anyway. I'd already given myself the one thing no one else ever thought to give me permission to stop waiting. I sat down at the kitchen table. The one with the little scratch on the edge from when Marcus tried to cut a peanut butter sandwich with a steak knife as a boy. I ran my finger over it. I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I was whole. For so long. I believed that love meant sacrifice. That being a good mother meant giving until I had nothing left but folded laundry and fading memories. That it was my job to keep giving. Even when nobody noticed. Even when it hurt. But I know better now. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's erasure. And I refuse to be erased. I still loved Marcus. I always would. But I couldn't carry his choices anymore. I couldn't carry the weight of his expectations. His failures. His silence. And his guilt. That was his to hold now. What I had left was mine. My stories. My songs. My shawl that still smelled like Walter's cedar drawer. My quiet mornings and the daisies Chris brought me every week without fail. My new friendships with women who knew what it meant to be overlooked and chose, instead, to shine anyway. Next to the kitchen phone was Miss Randall's card. And under it, a yellow sticky note with my updated password written in large letters. I wasn't about to let anyone handle things for me again. As I sipped my tea, I thought about the next birthday, not with dread, but with curiosity. Maybe next year I'd rent a cabin in the mountains. Invite the girls from the nonprofit. Maybe Lila would still be around. Still earning her seat back at the table. One kind gesture at a time. Maybe not. But either way, I'd be okay. Because I was no longer living for the hope of being remembered. I was living for the joy of remembering myself. And that was enough.